All right, I'm going to kick it off.
Okay.
Hey, guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell here with my co-host, Glenn Martin. We're going to keep this train moving along the AFC North as we've put out a couple videos ranking the position groups. We've done quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We're going to stay on the offensive side of the ball and talk about the big boys up front, the offensive line, probably the second most important position group on the offensive side of the ball. And, of course, we're going to give you our ranking from best to worst in the AFC North and back up our justifications. So let's start in the basement. Glenn, why don't you give us the worst team as far as offensive line goes in the AFC North?
Sure. And before I do that, I just want to preface this by saying that, I think I went into this thinking offensive line, we'll just throw it together. It won't be too hard. But, wow, this one, and you can attest, Jimmy, it's taken a toll on me, okay? Emotionally, okay, intellectually, it's breaking me down because I took way too much time looking over this. But number 4 for me, coming in dead last in the AFC North, shouldn't be a surprise to many, the Cincinnati Bengals bringing up the rear. Let me just say they have made – they should be better than they were last year. They have made a couple additions. They kind of had their first-round pick last year, Jonah Williams, was unlucky, got hurt last season. He looks like he's healthy and he's going to be ready to go this season. So they may have found their left tackle, which we all know, at least if you look at how they're paid, it seems to be the most important position on the offensive line. So maybe they found their guy at left tackle, but man, they're gonna need a lot of help. I mean, I don't know if he's enough because they need a lot of help. When you look at their rankings, it doesn't really matter where you look, depending on which site you trust the most. They were bad on every single list. So I think the record I have here, the bottom 10, they were ranked 31st on the site I have pulled up now, the list I have pulled up now, and then Football Outsiders did a great breakdown of the offensive line. Let me just say that wow, I mean, it had so much information available to us to help judge and grade who's better. So, yeah, that was kind of a long answer, Jimmy. But, yeah, ranked 4th is the Cincinnati Bengals. They need a lot of help to come up to these top 3 guys.
Yeah, I can't say anything different than the things that you stated. Using metrics, using the eyeball test, just looking at the depth chart, whatever way you want to rank your guys, they're going to come in dead last. I mean, period. And I don't know if it's a great combination for Mr. Joe Burrow, Mr. Swag, Mr. Cigar Smoker himself. I wouldn't be too excited if I were him, knowing those big boys I got up front, because I feel like, he benefited from an awesome, pretty dang good offensive line at LSU. So that'll be an interesting combination to say the least. But without any further ado, let's move on to where it gets a little more interesting. I think that the differences between the teams are a little closer at 3-2-1. Yeah, so it's not like they're way far apart like the Bengals. So Glenn, why don't you reveal to us your number 3?
Yeah, number 3. Let me tell you
really quick. If you got the same number 3 as me. If you got the same list as me,
then what?
We're going to have problems.
Well,
we're going to have problems.
I mean, I don't like to end up with the same list as you, but when you're only grading four teams, and we all know who 4th is, chances are, but we'll see how it shakes out. So my number 3 in the division is not too far behind number 2 or even number 1. I mean, these 3 teams, all 3 have good offensive line units. And the Browns are by far the most improved. They've done a lot to help Baker, and I think he's going to be – he should have been smiling in the offseason because they made some key additions, and we already know what they have as far as the skill positions. They're loaded. And now they seem to be, on paper, pretty loaded on the offensive line. So let me go over a couple of their new additions because they took care of them. So, first of all, they in free agency – they brought over Jack Conklin from the Tennessee Titans to play right tackle, and he is one of the best right tackles in the game when he's on the field. He's had some suspension issues early on, a little bit of injuries, but when he's on the field, he's only 25 years old. He's entering the prime of his career. He's one of the best right tackles. Excellent player. Left tackle, they draft their hopeful left tackle for the future with Jedrick Wills out of Alabama to play left tackle for quite some time. So they got high hopes on him. He was a highly graded and highly rated player coming out. So you never know with the draft, but they at least think, and a lot of people agree with them, that he could be a left tackle for a long time. So, boom, you got 2 tackles that they brought in. That's huge. And then you look at the interior, and it's got some nice names. I mean, they got Joe Bitonio, who's going to consistently be a good guard. He's their left guard. He's a good player. I mean, he's been to the Pro Bowl. Then you got J.C. Tretter at center, who's a pretty darn good player as well. I mean, guys that I think Bitonio and Tretter look to improve from what they did last year and get a little bit better. Now, right guard, there's some question marks. They got Wyatt Teller and Drew Forbes that both, I think, split time last year at right guard, and they struggled a little bit. So, but really, that's the one perceived hole, the one real weakness in their offensive line. If the left tackle pans out the way most expect, and if Bitonio and Tretter can kind of get back to – I mean, they weren't bad last year, but I think they could improve a little bit. And if Jack Conklin can stay healthy, oh my goodness, they fixed their right tackle position.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously you can't pay everyone, but I was surprised to see that he got away from Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, they paid Luan, but Conklin's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, once again, agree with you. I have them at number 3, and I agree with your analysis based on the fact that I think that they can be the most improved throughout this season.
Oh, yeah.
However, we've got to see them do it, and there's got to be real cohesiveness amongst an offensive line, and so they've got to be able to put it together. The things that you were mentioning, solid points, a lot of ifs, though, right? Like, there's got to be a lot of boxes checked. If Conklin can stay healthy, if Bitonio can kind of bounce back a little bit, if they're Jedrick Wills, if he turns out, right? So definitely 3rd, but I think they have one of the highest ceilings as far as overall talent, if not the highest ceiling. Yeah, in the division. Now, let me give you my 2nd.
Yeah.
This is really where it gets interesting. It pains me to do this, and by me saying that, I'm sure I've already given away my 2nd, but it pains me to put Baltimore number 2. The reason I'm putting Baltimore number 2 behind the Steelers is because I just mentioned it's about cohesiveness, and they just lost their anchor. While I realize that Stanley's an All-Pro, Orlando Brown's a Pro Bowler, you got 2 big question marks and a 3rd asterisk, right? Like, Bradley Bozeman started all 16 games last year, but I definitely don't think that they're 100% comfortable going in with Bozeman and no potential for improvement. So having that huge hole to cover, now we got Fluker, we got Tyree Phillips, who can potentially step in. But once again, just like we talked about with the Browns, ifs, right? These are ifs, no sure things. I do think that they will turn out. And then at the center position, Skura coming off that nasty knee injury. He just interviewed and talked about the workout he's been putting in, that, he's able to lift heavier and things like that. But still, I'm not convinced that knee can handle a 16-week grinding season. So who will be at center? And then, of course, the left guard, we got Bredesen as well, who I think is going to own that spot. And I think if Bozeman wants to stay on the starting line, he's going to have to move to center. But that's for another day. So with those things being said, I cannot put them in front of the Steelers, who have 3 pillars, not 2 like we have, who have 3 true pillars coming back to their offensive line. So because of that, I've put Baltimore number 2 and Pittsburgh number 1. Now, that is an airtight argument.
Wow. Well, I got to agree with you. I put Baltimore number 2 also, and this took me so long. Really, 1, 2, and 3 took me forever to decide where I would place them because, like I said, they're close. Now, if Marshall was to be returning, this would be a very easy decision. But when you take a Hall of Famer out of the group, there's going to be a drop-off. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, they went and got Fluker, who I think fits our team. But let's remember about Fluker, he wasn't necessarily lighting up the rankings out in Seattle. The fans, I think he was kind of a fan favorite in some ways. But if you look at most of the rankings, he was just okay as a guard. So it's not like they're swapping. It's going to be an even swap if Fluker is to slide in at right guard, which I don't know if that's a guarantee. He certainly has the inside track, but I don't know if that's a guarantee because Ben Powers has been here for a year, been in the offense, got high hopes for him. He was a middle-of-the-round pick last year. But then also, you mentioned Bredesen, but where's Tyree Phillips going to go? He's the guy that's, some people are projecting him to be the next Kelechi Osemele, or maybe they do predict him to be more of that swing tackle, at least early on, because I don't know if they want to see Andre Smith in at tackle anytime soon. But I agree. So the way I look at it is, they're good on the bookends. They're really good on the bookends, and that's big time when you're talking about offensive line. Now, in the center, you mentioned Bradley Bozeman. John Harbaugh was recently asked whether he was penciled in at left guard, Bradley Bozeman. He wasn't willing to say that. He said that he will play, but he wasn't willing to put him at left guard. So that means he's got a shot at center, which if he has a shot at center and Skura is still not 100%, or even if he's back, but just feel like it's time to move on, I could see Skura, possibly not making the team, Bozeman at center, Fluker at right guard, and then let's battle it out. Tyree Phillips, Ben Powers, and Bredesen. Let's see who wants that left guard spot, and let's see what happens, because now you got a lot of size, you got a lot of strength. I think it's going to be a very good offensive line. Now, will it be as good as last year with Yanda? We'll wait and see about that. But I think it's good enough with this system, with that quarterback behind them, to where they're still going to be a very highly ranked group and a pretty good unit as an offensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that by week 10, this is my declaration, like Michael Scott, I do declare. That was my best impersonation. It wasn't very good. But I think that by week 10, we will be – so I think Bozeman will be the center. I think Bredesen will be the left guard. And I think that Fluker will be the right guard this year. I think that eventually that'll be Tyree Phillips' job. But he's a young football player, kind of inexperienced since he only played 1 year in high school. So I think that if that is our interior three with, like you talked about, the bookends, I think we will have the best offensive line in the division, my opinion. But because I think Bredesen is going to be a monster. I just do.
Yeah, and when you look at the rankings, most rankings had us either 2 or 1. And, when you take Yanda out of the equation, we're going to be affected. But they're still very good players. I mean, these guys, you mentioned Bozeman. He may not be the best pass blocker, but he's a heck of a run blocker. He's a strong guy. He can get it done. And then, man, when Orlando Brown gets to moving towards you, he can move some furniture. You know what I'm saying? So, they're good. They're good even without Yanda. So that's why they're still up there, and I still think they'll be a top 5 offensive line.
Yeah, and of course I think you got to put Old Faithful, the Pittsburgh Steelers, their offensive line, number 1. And I mentioned this in my initial statement, but just to reiterate, they have 3 pillars, what I consider to be pillars in their offensive line coming back. They have Villanueva coming back, they have Pouncey, and they have DeCastro all coming back, and all of those guys are at least borderline Pro Bowlers. And then most of the time, like Pouncey and Villanueva, they're in the Pro Bowl. Like, these guys are players, they're legitimate staples at their position, and cohesiveness and consistency and time played together, those things really matter up front, because you've got to have some synergy and be able to know what the guy next to you is thinking to be one unit. I think that's super, super important to the offensive line. So I give that a lot of credit, and that is a heavy factor in my ranking. Therefore, the Steelers are solidly at number 1 for me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And we haven't mentioned depth much, but I think that's why Baltimore, to me, was above Cleveland, is that depth in the interior. One of them guys is going to make the starting lineup, but whoever doesn't is heck of a good depth to have in case of an injury. And I think the Steelers were able to kind of get some of that too this year, because they signed Steven Wisniewski in the offseason, who I think will be a perfect swing guy if everything goes the way they want it to, because I think what they want is their newly acquired guard, Kevin Dotson, in the 4th round, who they got out of I can't have the school right in front of me, but I remember the night he was drafted, everybody was raving about him. They say he's a typical Pittsburgh Steeler offensive lineman, big and nasty. So if he's sliding in at left guard, now Wisniewski can be your ultimate swing guy, and he can come in and play any of the guard positions in center. I mean, that's a really, really strong group. I mean, right tackle might not be a Pro Bowler, but outside of that, you go down that, you go left, and DeCastro, you mentioned Pro Bowler, Pouncey Pro Bowler, Villanueva's a Pro Bowler, all good players. Now you got a hopeful left guard who can be there for the next decade. If he turns out, especially in his first season, they're going to be really good. I mean, they're going to be, and then it doesn't hurt that Big Ben will be back, and they don't have Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, who I'm sure defensive coordinators were sending the house at and begging you to beat them. Well, they can't do that with Big Ben if he's anything like the old Big Ben. So, I think this is going to be a really good offensive line. They've got a little bit of depth, and I think they're good. I think they're going to be good.
Yeah, well, that's it for us, folks. We want to know what your guys' thoughts are. As we mentioned, we've been going around the AFC North in every position group, so make sure to go check out the quarterbacks, running backs, tight end, and wide receiver videos. Also, make sure to subscribe because we're going to do this defensive side of the ball. We want to make sure you guys stay up to date with that. Give us a go ahead and give us a like. Make sure to hit that button that's right here in the middle and subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.